Hello. Okay, I'm doing another live stream. Let me just test this and make sure things are set up. Okay. Hello, everybody. Okay, so this is my third live stream today. I'm super excited because my YouTube channel just got monetized. And so I've been working with the different features of monetization as well as live streaming on YouTube. So I have my live chat open here. The first time I live streamed was on purpose. The second time was because my live stream crashed. And now, after the end of our last live stream, I was just getting ready to start cutting up this fabric. I got a little nervous, and then also my family was calling, and so I went to spend some time with them. And now my husband is cooking dinner, the kids are playing upstairs, and I really am itching to pick up on this quilt and keep going. And I did some research on cutting for a 45-degree Lone Star situation, so I was going to talk to you about that. But yeah, so if you want to keep going on this Lone Star ombre fabric journey that I'm on, yeah, I'm excited. I think it'll be good. So, okay, here is the breakdown for this quilt so far. So I have cut the strips of fabric into 4-inch strips. So after piecing with a 1/4-inch seam allowance, my strips should measure 11 inches. So let me go to my overhead here. Okay, my overhead is set up. So this technically should measure, oh, whoops, at 11 inches, and it is measuring at 10 inches and 3/4, 10 3/4 of an inch. So here's the thing about this. I did some research on why this was happening. My 1/4-inch seam allowance was not a scant 1/4-inch seam allowance. So it seems like what my machine is set up at, like when I turn my machine on, the default width is 5 millimeters, when really it should have been more like 5.5 or maybe even 6 millimeters. However, I pieced all of these strips at that same seam allowance. So really what was happening was, instead of piecing at a 1/4-inch seam allowance, it was really more of like a 5/16 seam allowance. So just like a hair too much, too tight, which is why now my strips are measuring at 10 3/4 instead of 11 exactly. So I had some options. I could either unpick these strips and repiece them just a hair smaller, like a scant 1/4-inch, so that my overall strip would measure at 11 inches. Or what I can do is still just make sure that my seam allowance is set to the exact same thing that it has been the whole time, and then things will line up and they will all shrink proportionately. So the other thing here is that I will cut my 45-degree line at 4 inches. So like I measured my 4 inches on my ruler, and so what I would do is I would still cut on the 4-inch line across like this. But when I piece it, I would still just make sure that I'm using that same, like what's the opposite of scant 1/4-inch? Just like generous, a generous 1/4-inch. So luckily, because I'm not following a pattern or any measurements that are pre-written out, as long as I keep some logic to the method, everything is going to be fine. So if you're following along with this and you have cut out 4-inch strips and now you're measuring your total strip width, so from here to here, if you're using a 1/4-inch seam allowance, it should measure 11 inches exactly. Okay, so see how mine is 10 3/4. However, as long as my 10 3/4 are consistent, so if I look at other areas of my strip and I measure any given point and it's still measuring 10 3/4, then I at least know that my measurement is consistent, and that's what really matters the most. So because I did all 6 of these strips at the same time, I'm confident that it's going to be consistent. And so I'm going to go ahead and move forward with the process. Now, the other thing that I also did like, I had to think this through in my head before I actually make the cut. And one thing that I was nervous about was if my fabric, so if I was cutting this direction and my fabric is hanging off the edge of my table, then it's slowly going to pull on my fabric as I'm sewing it, and that could warp it a little bit because we're cutting these on the bias. So, but if I cut it from the other direction, then my 4 inches, I have to hold my ruler this way, and I'm right-handed, and so that was going to make it harder for me to cut. So what I can do is instead, I'm going to come on this side to line up my seam, my 4-inch seam, but then I also need my 45-degree line over here. So let me pull this over so you can see it. So this is my 45-degree edge. So essentially this corner needs to kiss right up in that corner. Okay, like that. And then I need to make sure that I'm cutting 4 inches, but then this line is lining up. Okay, so see, there's my 4 inches, but then here's my 45-degree angle so that I'm not too far this way or this way. So this is the point that I'm watching for as I line this up. Then I can hold this and cut with my right hand. However, that also means that, see how my fabric is hanging off the edge of my table? I don't want that to happen. So what I'm going to be doing is sliding this over and just keeping the rest of my my strip on my table and not letting it drape over the edge. Okay, so this will require some reorganization as I go, but that's okay because now my my strip does not have to be square with my cutting mat at all. It just has to be square with my ruler marking lines. Okay, so if I had my fabric like this, see how it's crooked compared to my mat? But as long as it's lined up with my 4 inches and consistent with my 45-degree, then I can cut this and I'm going to be just fine. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and take the plunge and start cutting these. Let me move my camera. Whoops. I'm going to move my main angle camera down just a teensy bit so that you can see that a little more. And I can even move it closer just a tad and down a little more. So it's not quite the overhead, but that's okay. I didn't know if maybe this would be a good angle to do this so that you can see it really well. Okay, so I have my 6 strips. So now my rule of thumb, my rule of thumb is making sure that my dark is on the top or furthest away and my light is closest to me. Okay, so now I'm gonna take the plunge. Like I said, this is the scariest part, but I'm just watching for this line here, my 45-degree, and then my 4 inches. So this piece of tape is actually not quite. In fact, I could even put this tape here like that, and then I could put another piece of tape like this to represent another 45-degree. So it's like, although it's not going to be as accurate. Well, I mean, actually, really, it should be pretty accurate. I'm not going to care a ton about these tapes, though. This is what I really care about, is my true 45-degree line and my 4 inches. Okay, so the key here, actually, maybe my overhead is a better view, but I guess you can still see me down here in the corner of the screen, right there, while I do this so you can have 2 angles. Okay. So I'm going to, the first cut is always the scariest one. So I'm pretty sure I have all this correct. It's laid out nicely. It's not draped over the edge, and it's 4 inch. Oh my gosh, you know what? Oh my heck. I cannot believe this. Okay, remember in our last live stream? See this right here? Those arrows? Look at this. 1, 2, 3 and a half. Oh my my gosh, you guys. It has to go this way. I literally almost just started cutting my strips and that would have ruined the whole project. Oh my gosh. Okay. So this is, that was good. It's good that I caught that right when I did. So what that means is my bottom edge of my fabric, I just need to move this closer to me so I can get it. So my bottom corner here is what really matters. So 4 inches, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's what I want, not 3.5. Oh my gosh, you guys, I can't believe I did that. I really cannot believe I did that. Okay. So I would just like, honestly have to just like turn off the live streaming and just go to bed if I did that. I just, seriously, that is so crazy. Okay. So now the other thing to make sure that each side is staying on that 45, my 45 goes all the way to this corner. So my strip of fabric should be coming out of that, matching that 45 degree right there. So what I don't want is like this or like this. Okay, see my corner is not quite lined up. So I'm not only lining up my 45 degree with my 4 inches, but I'm also lining up the very corner of my ruler, and that should, by extension, make this corner line up with this corner on my ruler. Okay, so I'm looking at all angles. So again, keeping this 4 inches like so. Okay, whew. All right, now we have our 4-inch marking. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, now I can do my cuts. Oh my gosh, you guys, I cannot believe that. Jeannie Mojo says hello. Hello. She says, or they, sorry, I don't know if Jeannie is a boy or girl. The colors look really interesting. Is this the medium set? So this is the medium and the dark and the light. So, oh, that's right. Let me go ahead. I'm going to post a link to the panel here in the chat. Okay. And then also don't forget to use this coupon code when you check out, and that'll give you 25% off all the panels in my collection on Honest Fabric. Glad you caught that. Oh my gosh, me too, Kim. I cannot believe that. Hi, Melanie. It's good to see you. Okay, so I just did the first cut. So this is what we're going for, a 4-inch strip. So here is the smaller baby version from the last time I made this quilt. And here's the big boy. I like it bigger. Oh my gosh, it's gonna be so freaking fun to quilt. Oh, I like going bigger strips. This is gonna be really fun. Okay, so now when I cut these, I also want to keep them in order. So I'm just gonna slide this over and then come to the next one, line it up with my 4-inch. So I'm lining up my corner with this edge and then that corner with my 4-inch. And that should keep things nice and square. Okay, so there's my next strip. Okay. Oh, these are going to be so awesome, you guys. This quilt is going to really come together nicely. Okay, so again, line that up there, line that up there. Make sure my fabric is nice and flat. And line up that corner. And here we go again. And one more, and then I will readjust my fabric. Okay, so see what we've got so far. All right, so before I move on, I want to look at these more as singulars. So I'm going to just move these to the side a little bit. Okay, and move that. So notice how the variation, like the ombre, is very, very subtle. Like you can see a little bit, but for the most part, this piece reads as a fairly solid color, as does this one, as does this one, okay? And then like same with here, we can see kind of a variation in color, but for the most part, the most variation is dark, medium, and light. So that's exactly what we're going for. And then you can start to see the difference between the steps in colors, right? So see how this is obvious different colors, and then same with these. So this is what is so fun about this panel, is that when you start to play with these as sets, they look very similar, but they are technically different. All I did was swapped these two, okay? So if I move these back, this is very much going to look like an ombre again. Okay, but then even just swapping these two, if I were to pair these together, these are far enough apart in color that you can see a difference. So these would almost read as identical, but they are very, very subtly different, okay? And this is gonna be even more fun when we have more than just 4 of these strips to work with, because we are going to collate them, where we might do like this one and maybe this one together, and then this one and a further one, right? So we're gonna start spreading them a little further apart to collate them, and I'll show you what that looks like after we cut this. So I'm going to stack these up just so that I have a little more space. But again, the most important part right now is to make sure that these stay in order, so that when I pull from them, I have, I kind of know how far in the rainbow they are going to stagger. Okay, so again, I need to make sure that my excess strip is not hanging off the edge of my table. So I'm just kind of draping that there and laying out the parts that I need while I'm cutting them. So again, I'm gonna line up my 4-inch right there. Okay, so there's my 4 inches, but then notice here, I'm not lined up, so I need to slide along that 4-inch mark until my corner of my ruler touches the corner of my strip. And again, verifying way over here that that's still on the 4. I don't want to accidentally swivel this way or that way. So I'm checking multiple points while I'm cutting. So getting that corner on and getting that corner on. Oops. All right, I'm going to stand up for this. So I'm just taking this nice and easy and slow. Honestly, a stripology ruler would be awesome for this. I don't own one. I should probably invest in one so that I can do, you know, 2 or 3 cuts at a time at a 4-inch angle. But for now, I should text my next door neighbor because I think she has a stripology ruler and she would probably let me borrow it. Oh, okay. Jeannie Mojo was asking, is this the medium set? I don't know, now that I think about it, were you talking about the medium size panel or the medium like color scheme? If you're talking about the size of the panel, this is a size large panel. So the 88 by 104 inch panel is what I'm using. So each of these strip sets are 104 inches long. Well, technically a teensy bit shorter, but they span the 104-inch panel. So now that I think about it, I don't know for sure if that's exactly what you were meaning when you were asking if it's the medium set. On Honest Fabric, it's the dark, medium, and light. I do also have another one called Rainbow Ombre Dark, Medium, and Light, where it's just the cool colors and then just the warm colors, so that you could experiment with this more. I will also put that in the chat. I'll call this the alternate ombre of dark and light as separate panels, if you're interested in that one. But the main one that we're using is just the first link that I posted in the comments, and the one that I've been posting in the comment section. Okay, so lining up that 4-inch. Oh my goodness, I just love these colors. They're so, so pretty. Okay, so now I can lay this out all the way. Okay, so see how this is not hanging over the edge of my desk anymore? So that's what I want. Just lay it nice and flat. Line up the 4-inch. And then also the corner. So there's my 45 degree. So this line is basically making sure I stay at an exact 45 degree, and this line is making sure that I do exactly 4 inches. Okay, it looks like we can probably get one more strip out of here. Okay, so getting kind of off right there. There we go. Okay, so now we've got our strips and some extra. That's kind of a bummer because that pink, I really would love a little more pink. But when I redesigned the panel, okay, let me pull these out so we can look at them. Okay, so when I redesigned this panel, one thing that I didn't like about the last panel was that I felt like it was too stark of a contrast between jumping from the purple back to the pink. I felt like it jumped to the red too quickly. So one thing that we can do to kind of test and see if we like this is I'm going to pull that first pink one and lay it here. And if I feel like it's a pretty good, like that is kind of a further jump than I would have liked between each of these, like purple and then pink, there's not quite as much as I would have liked. So what I could have done when I designed the ombre was done even more pink along the edges so that it would kind of account for this selvage that we lost. But obviously there's nothing I could do now because the fabric has been printed. So anyways, I'm still even myself seeing how I like this and how it's laying out. Okay, now the other thing that we need to do is some math to figure out if the one panel is going to be enough for the entire quilt. So let me adjust my main camera here really quick and I will bring you back up so I'm not cutting my head off. Okay. All right, so with a Lone Star quilt, each of the diamond sections, oh, Jeannie says, I'm glad there isn't more pink. I dislike pink, but I love the turquoise. I love the turquoise too. Oh, and she also said, glad to see the tape used by somebody else. Yes, I feel like the tape just keeps me sane and less paranoid. I really like the turquoise as well too, but my goal for this was that each color could really be represented equally. Now I have, like looking at this now, I have a lot of green, which I'm not mad about because green is my favorite color. And so, yeah, so it's interesting to see how these kind of, like if I were to count, okay, I have 2 pink, basically 1 red, 2 orange, 1 yellow, 5 green, maybe 2 yellow and 4 green, 4 blue, 2 purple, 2 pink, right? So I can start to see how those break down. Okay, so now with a Lone Star quilt, bare minimum, we need 8 of these, okay? And these are 3 different sections of our single strips that we just cut. So basically what we're gonna do now is a little bit of math. So I'm gonna pull my phone off, even though it's gonna disconnect from the camera, and we're gonna do some math here. Okay, so for the calculator, for the length of strips that we have, we were able to get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 strips. Okay, so we have 17 strips from one set, from one long strip, and we have 6 of those long strips that we were able to get from the single large size panel. So 17 times 6. Okay, that's 102 of these guys, okay? Now it takes 3 of them to make a single diamond set. So I'm gonna divide that by 3, and that's gonna give us 34 diamonds. This is really great news because what I was thinking I wanted to do was to do like on the actual Lone Star, I'm gonna use my little ones as an example. Okay, so a Lone Star quilt, let me grab some more of these. I know I have more finished. Dun, 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 dun. Actually, I have quite a few finished at this size. Okay, so let's go to the overhead again and we will kind of lay this out. So I'm gonna set my actual pieces to the side and we'll play with these and pretend that this is what we're using. Okay, so I was thinking for a regular Lone Star, we need 8 of these like 9 patches, right? So if I were to lay out like that, okay, and the reason that these are still not used is because, like I said, I didn't quite cut them the right way, and so they don't totally fit together the right way. I like squared them up, but I squared them up wrong. Anyways, so, okay, so ideally, this is kind of what a Lone Star would look like. So that means we need 8 diamonds to do that. But now if we want to add another layer onto these, so I'm just going to take half away and let's look at this from the half. So now if I wanted the diamonds to be bigger, then what I would need for each of these new bigger diamond sets is I would need 4. Okay, so now each diamond is like this. Okay, and what is 4 times 8? 32. But technically we can get 34 from this one panel. So this is great because that means that it gives us a little bit of wiggle room for like mixing and matching, which is awesome. That's really, really good. I'm really happy with that. Kim says, I would love to see more purple myself if I was making one. Yeah, it's interesting. So I can go back to the file on Honest Fabric and I can workshop it a little bit. To kind of have different, you know what I really should do? I should make ombres that are more like dark mediums and lights, but then focusing on a specific color scheme. Like that's what I did with the other one. So it's like if you wanted to see no warm colors and just do all cool colors, you could get the cool color one. Anyways, this is fun. And like the most important part about this, in my opinion at least, is that we are just really exploring this, and also we're practicing our Lone Star quilt making skills. Okay, so with one strip set, I was able to get 17 strips. And I'm confident that with every strip set, I'll get 17. So what I can do, because 17 is not a triplet of 3s, like it's not a multiple of 3s. And so what I could do is cut a couple of the strip sets out so that I have more to work with, and then I can pull and collate from those 2 sets together. And then since I'll have 6 of these sections left over. So if at any point in time I wanted to, like I could cut all of my strip pieces and then remove 6 of them if I feel like there's too much of one color, and then make the diamonds using what's left over, right? So like with this one, if we go back to the overhead, I could say with actually what I could do is from every strip set, like these 2 greens are probably the closest in color with everything that I have. So I could potentially remove this whole strip set in every set of strips. So now I have 16 here, which means that between a couple strip sets, I'll be able to make, what's 16 times 2? 32 divided by 3. So 10 plus some, yeah. So you're gonna need, or I am going to need all 6 strip sets cut and then pull from those. So that's what I'm gonna do. So before I get too crazy and start eliminating things, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cut all 6 of my strip sets out and lay them like I've got this laid out. And I remember last time I made these sets, I was like struggling to move them around because I had them like staggered like this so that I could see them all. And then I had a brilliant idea. I could use my cutting ruler like a pizza lifter, like a pizza, what do they call that? A pizza spatula? I don't know. Anyways, so I can move those up over there out of the way. And now we are going to grab our next strip set and do the same thing again. Now remember, with our strip sets, we need to make sure that we don't drape any of the edge of the fabric over the side of the table. And also we need our dark furthest away from us. So I'm going to line this up. And then the first thing that I need to do before I start cutting my strips is I need to find my 45-degree angle along this outer side. Okay, so I'm gonna lay this, and now I'm looking at this point right here and then still lining up with my bottom edge of my pieces, and then making sure that all of these little corners go past that line. But I'm not lining up my 4 inches with those corners. Okay, so This is the part that is the trickiest, I would say, is just making sure that we're getting our first initial 45-degree cut right. So I'm going to be using this edge of my fabric, but I'm also going to line up my top edge with my lines on my cutting mat. Okay, and I'm also curious to measure this and see how wide it is. Okay, I'm still at the 10 3/4, so that's good. So remember how we were talking about how my seam allowance was a little bit thicker than it should have been, which made all of my strips 10 3/4 instead of 11 inches like they should be. As long as I keep piecing at the same seam allowance, I'm going to be fine. Okay, so to chop off these jagged ends and turn this into a crisp 45-degree, I'm going to line up with that bottom edge and keep that top edge square. Okay, and then I'm going to slide this over, and now I'm watching this edge because I don't want to go too far and cut into the fabric I have, but I want to cut off the least amount as possible. So I'm good here, but notice up here. So I need to slide this until I hit that corner. And again, making sure I have a good crisp 45-degree edge. And then I'm also looking at my ruler over, sorry, you can't see it because it's behind. I can move that out of the way really quick, hang on. Okay, so I'm also looking this 45-degree line where my tape is, lining that up with my cutting mat as well. Just so that I know for sure, my fabric is lined up with my cutting mat and my ruler is lined up with my cutting mat. So that's gonna give me the most accurate 45-degree cut. And I cut off the least amount as possible. I know I have some here and here, but that was literally the corner of my top dart. Okay, so now I'm gonna set that aside. And now, same thing I'm gonna do here. I'm gonna line up my little corner with my 4 inches there. And making sure along this edge as well, I'm keeping that angle. So to me, this is the trickiest part of the Lone Star, is just making sure that I'm keeping each of these 45-degree cuts super accurate and precise, because it's really easy to get off and become imbalanced. So I'm looking at this spot right here and making sure that this corner lines up with the corner of my tape, and then also making sure that this corner lines up with the 4-inch line, and then making sure this corner lines up down here as well. Okay, so this part is a little more tedious, but again, it's in my opinion, the most important part of making sure that your 45-degree cut is totally accurate. So this part is going to take some time, but it's part of the game, right? Yeah, Melanie, so I did some mental math and counting between this live stream and the previous live stream. I don't know if you caught the previous live stream, but I was like so close to cutting my fabric doing this, but then I got scared. And so I went and just like read up on Lone Star quilts and just like triple checked my math to make sure that everything was accurate and made sense. So I find that the easiest point to line up first is this one. And then after that one is lined up, then to get those corners lined up. Now, I suppose another thing that might be actually a little bit convenient about the fact that I pieced these strips at 5/16 of an inch instead of a scant 1/4 inch is that I think it'll just give me a little bit more wiggle room when I'm piecing these together to get things to line up. It just, you know, my seam allowance is a little bit more generous. At least logically it seems like that would make sense. So, and then also I think the fact that these blocks are big is going to be really nice. Like, I'm really excited at the prospect of having a very big Lone Star quilt, especially when it comes to like deciding how to free motion quilt it. There's more playroom for me because I definitely like to quilt negative space quilts. Like, I like to quilt really, really big and not do a lot of like stitch in the ditch micro quilting on a functional quilt. Oh, because that's the other thing. I plan for this to be a functional quilt. So that's another thing that's nice about having piecing, but also having it be on a larger scale, is it just gives me more room to kind of play and explore when it comes to the quilting, which to me is the most fun part of this whole deal, is the actual quilting. For me, piecing is a means to an end to get to the quilting, because that's the most fun part for me. I can't believe I almost started cutting these from the wrong side of the ruler. That would have been the most embarrassing thing ever. Honestly, I probably just would have deleted all of these live stream videos and tried to pretend that it never happened. That would have been so embarrassing. Next time I'll need to draw on my ruler these arrows with a Sharpie so that it's super nice and dark and not just with a pen. Or who knows, maybe I could have left it on the internet and it would just turn into clickbait for people who just want to see me make mistakes. Maybe it would have boosted my engagement for my monetization. I don't know. I'm still learning so much about all of that. So it's definitely a work in progress of figuring out how to manage a successful YouTube channel in a sustainable way. Because I think for me, like I've said this before, but that's the hardest part for me, is like the follow through and the consistency. But I mean, I feel like I can give myself a little bit of grace and cut myself some slack for the fact that I have 3 small children running around, and I'm, you know, trying to run a business full time while also being a stay-at-home mom. So it's always a balancing act, you know. So consistency is not my strong suit, but it also makes sense that it's not my strong suit right now. Okay, I think this would be easier for me if I stood up. Okay, so now I'm starting to see an easier or quicker way to line this up is to line up the 4 inches with with this edge of my fabric like that. So making sure it's lined up, and then sliding until my corner hits that 45-degree line. Okay, so another thing that I also just considered is really what I need is the 4 inches. So I really could just line up my 4 inches and slice and slice and slice. So me also lining up with this 45-degree is, you could argue that it's overkill, or you could argue that it's just extra, like extra mindfulness of making sure that my 45-degree line doesn't slowly get skewed. Because if I were to, like, if this edge were not a perfect 45 degrees and I only used that edge as my reference point, then slowly over time these could start skewing, and that would be really bad and sad. So it's like the fact that I'm using 2 edges will double keep things consistent, which is good. So anyways, that's another thing that I've learned about making Lone Stars now that I've made a couple of them, is how to fact check myself and keep things as consistent as possible, instead of just like measuring one thing from the previous thing, from the previous thing, from the previous thing, because this way every single cut I know is an accurate 45-degree seam, or 45-degree cut. Okay, so now I'm starting to get to the end here. There's my last one, but things are a little off right there. There we go. Thank you, Lexi. Lexi says every trick helps. I totally agree. Okay, so there's my last piece, and then we do not have enough for this one. Okay, so now I've cut 2 strips. So I think you know what? I think I'm going to cut 1 more, and then we'll move to the collating part. Because like I said, I've said this in previous live streams, but I really feel like for me, I need to not start letting, like, I need to not let certain areas fall through the cracks. Like if I get one strip too far ahead and then the other strips, I'm like, oh, now I got to go back and do those things. So I'm trying really hard to be mindful of doing all of the steps in the process for all the 6 strips. But I realize that makes the live streams feel a little bit slower. So that's another thing that I'm still trying to decide, is like, when I do a live stream, how much of it do I want to do as like step outs where I do other parts off camera versus what do I do straight on camera? Which I think is good. Like, it's just good learning. And then I was also talking about this in my last live stream like 3 hours ago. I think that as I continue to get a schedule in place, that will also help me with like communicating what exactly it is we're working on. Like, is this going to be more of like a chill out sit and sew, or is it going to be more of like an educational class where it's like more active with me, like describing what I'm doing, you know? And so I'm still just learning the best way to do that. Oh, Melanie says the seam lines should always line up in the ruler intersection, and that's one more way to check for accuracy. Thank you. Okay, that is a really good point. So let me come back to my overhead and let's start cutting this next one. So again, I'm gonna, okay, get this lined up here. All right, so my seam lines, I could start to look at like what my, okay, so like if we cut this first one, I've got to line up my 45-degree line with this bottom edge. But again, I should line this up with the cutting mat. The first 45-degree cut of each strip is when I care about lining it up with the cutting mat. After that, I'm not as worried about it. So, which is okay. And this looks like it measures 11 inches. Yeah, it's a little closer, but that's okay. Again, that's what my seam allowance is for. And so if I prioritize lining up my seams, like my points when I do the 9 patch, then I should be okay. Okay, so again, I'm gonna line up here, and now my 45-degree line along that line, and then I'm gonna slide it until I hit either one of these corners or that top corner. And I want to try to get as close to this as possible. Okay. There we go. That's nice. Perfect. Okay, so now when I line this up, I have my 45-degree there. And there. So now I could also say the seam should line up with the 10 and the 5 1/4 at a diagonal. So I could do that as well. I could fact check that as well, like Melanie was saying. 5 1/4 inches and then 10 inches. Sorry, I just saw some comments. Rusty said, I just finished watching the earlier live and found this one. We'll need to go back to watch the start. Awesome. Lexi says, and ma'am, that is one huge cutting mat. Okay, it sure is. It is 47 inches by like 36 inches. It is awesome. I love it so much. It really is nice, especially for projects like this that are freaking gargantuan. Rusty said, I thought you were going swimming. I did. I did go swimming. And then I took a shower, and now my husband is making lasagna from scratch, being the freaking cute man that he is. And so I was like, I want to jump back on live stream and work on this quilt some more. So I did go swimming, and it was glorious and beautiful. And the weather right now is friggin' hot. And so jumping in a swimming pool was very, very nice, very relaxing. Oops, missed one little spot. Rusty says, sounds perfect. Swim and dinner cooked for you so we can watch you make a quilt. Yep, exactly. I typically am the one to cook. I enjoy cooking a lot, and my husband enjoys cleaning up after me a lot and eating food that I cooked a lot. But he made some lasagna a couple weeks ago, and from scratch, and it was so delicious. And so today, while we were swimming, he was like, okay, I heard that like ricotta in lasagna is kind of like an American adaptation of like authentic Italian lasagna. And he's like, there's this sauce that you can make that is kind of like a roux, where it's butter and milk and flour and seasonings. And that's normally what like actual Italian lasagna has. And he's like, so I kind of want to try again and try it with this flour sauce. And I was like, I would love for you to try it again and cook me some food. So that's what he's doing. So he's just cooking that, and we're gonna have that. We have some garlic bread, and also my tomatoes in my garden are just starting to bechamel. Yes. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but yes. He was talking about that. He was like, I was Googling it and I couldn't find it. And then he realized he was using a V instead of a B and calling it bechamel. And anyways, yeah, bechamel sauce. Yes. Okay. I'm so glad that, this is making sense to you guys. So anyways, so he is doing it that way. And I'm very, very, very excited to eat it. I don't know if y'all know this about me, but one of my main love languages is eating food that I did not cook. I love it so much. So yeah. Oh, Lexi says, what size panel did you start with? I started with the large panel. So the 88 by 104 inch panel is what I started with. Now you could do this with any size panel from Honest Fabric. You could do it with the small or the medium. It would just, you may not be able to do the exact same size that I'm doing. So I did the 4-inch strips, but that's like, again, one thing that I really love about a Lone Star quilt is once you understand the process or the technique, you can cater what size you do it based on how much fabric you have or what size fabric you're doing. Okay, I have one more here, and let's see if I can make it. Oh my gosh, it's so close, but I think we're gonna make it. Awesome. Okay, so I'm just going to slide this. That's awesome. This is the most, oh, dang it. This bottom corner. Dang, I got excited too quickly. But see that? Oh, let me scoot it up so you can see. So I went to go line this up and everything looked great until I looked at this bottom corner. So bummer there. So that piece is not useful. Okay, bechamel. Okay, bechamel sauce. How large is the finished quilt going to be? Okay, also a great question, Lexi. I do not know yet. So because this is improv style and I'm doing just a lone star in the middle, and then I'm gonna do blank, like just, what's the word I'm looking for? Like solid colored fabric around the edges. I'm not doing any other piecing outside of the lone star other than to add the background fabric. So I could make it as big or as small as I want. Like I could make it just the width of the lone star, which I think would be, I mean, let's see. Let me do some math here. But let's see, one of these is how many inches? 15, 30. So like 65-inch square if I go just right up to the edge of my star. Or I could make it bigger by adding extra background fabric around the edges. So I have not even gotten that far yet. But I do know that I want this to be a functional quilt. I want it to be decent size, like probably at least an 80-inch square. Because I want to give myself plenty of negative space around the edge to quilt with. So yeah, I can't tell you the size yet, but it's going to be beautiful. Okay, so, and thank you for telling me about the sauce, bechamel sauce, bechamel. That's awesome. I learn something new every day. Okay, so I now have my 3 strips cut out, right? So we can see this here. Oh, they're so pretty. Look how gorgeous those are. Okay, so for the sake of time, now I am going to collate these to show you what that looks like. But then I do need to go back and cut my other strips. I can't leave those behind. I don't want to get too far ahead because I know this about myself, that I just don't want things to fall through the cracks. Otherwise, going back and finishing the parts that I leave behind that fall through the cracks will bug me. So, okay, so notice with these strips, they kind of are lining up to be rainbow order, right? Okay, except this one, remember how we put that there? This one really technically goes right here, like so. Oh, hi. Is dinner ready? Yeah. Sweet. Okay, we're gonna stop right here. I'll give you a little preview of what the collating looks like. But essentially, it's probably what you think based on the word collate, if you know what the word collate means. So what we're gonna do is we now need to pull 3 of our strips from this collection that we will later turn into these. Okay, now the whole goal of this is to not use the colors right next to each other that were right next to each other in the strip. So what I would not do here is just go like this. Okay, because when I piece these together, see how that ombre lines up, and you can see that they were just right next to each other. And it's basically like the seam is pointless because because that's literally where I cut it from. So what I want to do is break up the colors enough so that they are more obvious where each diamond is. Okay, so what I would do instead is, instead of just taking the first 3, what I would do is I'll take the first one and then I would skip skip 1. Okay, so do that and then skip another one. So I'd take this one. Okay, so now see how I have much more color variation in this one single diamond. That's what I want to go for. I want those colors to really stand out. And now see how different these are? So I could potentially even use those as their own, but I want to keep on collating as I go. Okay. So now I also need to remember that I want to make sure that I sew these like this or stack them like this, knowing that they're going to open that way. What I want to be really careful of to not do is stack them like this, and then when I go to piece them like this. Okay, so see how it's going backwards? The rainbow is going backwards. I need them to always be in rainbow order where they are closer to each other. Okay, so can you kind of see the difference there? Where it's like this is more purple and pink, yet it's going right next to a blue that's a lot more green than blue. Okay, so I just need to be very mindful of that when I am collating these and putting them together. So I'm going to stack them in a way and lay them back out in a way when I go to piece them, and I'll show you when I actually go to piece these, where I know that like my purple most color is always to the right, and my like the rainbow should always go left to right. So red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple, not red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple. Okay, so see how this whole rainbow, it's going from right or from left to right, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple. Okay. So let's see. Lexi says, I feel you. Want to go to the next step, but yes, best to finish each task in order. Yes, I totally agree with that. I really struggle with that. So this is forcing me to stay on track and not start jumping ahead and doing like step out style quilting. I want everything to be done. So before I actually even collate these, I'm just going to continue cutting and laying them together. So in my next live stream, I will I'll pick up where I left off of cutting, and we'll keep cutting and do everything. Because I think at least for this quilt project, I want to do everything from start to finish on screen during my live stream so you can see every single one of those things. I don't want it to just be like, oh, she did all this stuff behind the camera or behind the scenes, and now I don't know exactly what she did. I want you to see every single step of the way. So I'm going to leave this. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to collate this back together so that it's just still in order safely. Okay, so I think, let's see, this blue, nope, and that blue's wrong. Okay, so this is more turquoise. There we go. So then there was this one, right? That's more green. And then this one went there. And then this one went there. And when I do my next set, that pink will go here, right? See? So I could really start anywhere in the rainbow as long as it's going left to right. Okay. And I'm going to want to do that actually. Like I want to make sure that I get some diamond sets that are like blue, purple, pink, and then purple, pink, red, and then red or pink, red, orange, right? So I want to make sure that I'm really collating them to the full circle of the rainbow. Melanie says 8 piles, 1 for each diamond. Yes, you're exactly right. That's exactly right. Let's see. Rusty said, I used the end cutoffs and trimmed them all to the smallest equal triangle size and added to the border. That's cute. That's a good idea. I could definitely do that with these. I could take some smaller, or I could even cut this at 2.5 inches and use it as binding on the bias. That could be really cute because that's already a 45 degree. So maybe I'll do that. I'm going to save these. I'm not gonna throw these out yet. So yeah, so I've got this laid out. Let's see. Melanie says, if it were me, I would cut everything before sewing anything. Yes, I agree. You're right. And I'm going to do that too. Lexi says, oh no, there's a rainbow police. Yes. Oh my gosh. I am the rainbow police. You guys, when it comes to rainbow color order, I am for sure the police. Like, okay, here's the thing. I won't like force it on anybody else. I will not even point it out. Except for like to Andrew, usually I'll be like, that rainbow's out of order. But like, I won't try to make you feel bad about it. But for me, I just love, I love when things are in rainbow order. It's not that I hate non-rainbow order. it's just, there's something so joyful to me about seeing rainbows and seeing colors in order. And I'm sure it stems from like early childhood. Every time I got like a new art set or a set of paints or crayons or whatever, I eat my M&Ms in order. I eat my Skittles in order, in rainbow order. And anyways, so I think I am the rainbow police. If you're attempting to put it in rainbow order, put it in rainbow order. If it's obviously not meant to be in rainbow order, then fine. But like, please just don't swap two colors. Like when I see like children's clothing with rainbows on it, where the blue and the green are swapped, I'm like, what? Who is in charge? Who's in charge there? It's anarchy in the art department. So anyways, Lexi says, tell your husband you didn't want to burn your tongue or the roof of your mouth, hence the delay. That is a good excuse. So anyways, okay, this was fun. I'm so glad that we made more progress on this quilt. I'm excited to keep on going. And thank you guys for tuning in and watching. I'm having really a lot of fun with these live streams. Like it's fun to be in my studio and share what I'm working on. It feels less lonely. I feel like sometimes, a lot of times, quilting is kind of a singular sport and can feel a little bit lonely. So these live streams are a fun way to kind of hang out and yeah, do it together, and you get to see it unfold, and it's fun to talk about different things interspersed with hopefully learning something new about quilting. So if you have never tried making a Lone Star quilt, I would definitely recommend it. And once you watch this video series, you're gonna know how to do it yourself. So okay, well, until next time, happy quilting, and I will talk to y'all later. Bye.